For a piece of music to minister to generation after generation after generation, it has to have some remarkable quality about it that transcends the uniqueness of every generation and finds the common depth of the human heart and therefore touches every generation, and so it gets preserved over time. Which means that if things have been around in music for a long time, it probably says there's something there that's worth being touched by.
There's a reason some hymns last for hundreds of years. And it's not just tradition, it's resonance. They speak truths that reach us deeply and they don't wear out. I'm Dan Kruver. In this episode of Light and Truth, John Piper helps us understand why certain songs keep showing up in every generation of the church. In a Q&A time in the middle of the episode, he gives us an inside look at a season of transition in the songs Bethlehem sang together in corporate worship. This teaching was originally delivered at Bethlehem Baptist Church on Wednesday evening, October 10th, 1990.
Revelation 15. Verse 2, maybe we'll start. I saw what appeared to be a sea of glass mingled with fire, and those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name standing beside the sea of glass with harps of God in their hands, and they sang the song of Moses, the servant of God, from Exodus 15:1. Following, and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and wonderful are thy deeds, O Lord God the Almighty. Just and true are thy ways, O King of the ages. Who shall not fear and glorify thy name? This is a quote, by the way, I think from Exodus 15:11. Who shall not fear and glorify thy name, O Lord? For thou alone art holy. All nations shall come and worship thee, for thy judgments have been revealed. In heaven, we will pick up the best of the old. At least we'll sing Moses' song. Now, I don't think probably that I need to have too much biblical warrant in order to say to you, if you only sing what's new, you'll be impoverished. You will be what C.S. Lewis called chronological snobbery. You will think that your time is the best time and the only time, the rich time. You'll have myopia, and you'll only be able to see what's being done today. If you only knew contemporary worship songs, you would be impoverished. And therefore, the old, I believe, becomes utterly crucial. And I was thinking, one of the values of time, passing time, is that it is a wonderfully effective eliminator of fluff. It really does effectively weed out most weak and crummy music. If you give yourself enough decades and enough time, the only thing that's left from a century or two or three or four ago are things that they've evidently done something to the human heart over generations that the human community won't let them go. Whereas a lot of stuff that's not bad, but it just didn't go deep enough, it didn't do enough to enough different kinds of people. You see, for a piece of music to minister to generation after generation after generation, it has to have some remarkable quality about it that transcends the uniqueness of every generation and finds the common depth of the human heart and therefore touches every generation, and so it gets preserved over time. Which means that if things have been around in music for a long time, it probably says there's something there that's worth being touched by. And I think, therefore, that's a good argument for weaving into every community a significant portion of traditional music. And then, I hope it goes without saying, after the text we've seen, that we should weave in a significant portion of contemporary new statements of affection for God and admiration for Him and wonder about Him and faith and love. Now let me just ask, we'll start here and then go over there. Go ahead. The answer is both, I'm sure, that we saw at least two verses that suggested instrumentation is new, but in the midst of a new instrumentation, you got old truth. And even when I say we need new lyrics, I don't mean new truth. I mean old truth in new forms, old truth in new ways expressed. We just desperately need to hear the great old story told in fresh, new ways. I just think that's what my job is on Sunday morning, is to find some expressions and ways and images and ways so that the old story becomes new power in people's lives. Randall, did you have your hand up? I agree entirely, and that's been expressed numerous times, the repetition. And I think last Sunday night, for example, was right. I mean, that felt right to me. I don't know whether you were here, but we sang the worship songs twice, and that felt real right to me. The Spirit seemed right. I mean, the enthusiasm was such that when we hit it the second time, you felt like people who had not known it the first time were now ready to go into it and give it their best. But we all feel when we get to a point where, oh no, not again. And it might be a hymn. I mean, it's not just worship song. It's not intrinsic to the genre that it has to have that problem about it. Isn't that correct? Okay. So I accept that warning, and I think we need to be careful that we don't use music inappropriately to create artificial emotions. Jan, or where? Freshness. You're so right. You can sing a new song in a dead way, and I've written some, and they fall flat. And you can sing a great old song in such a vital, alive, new, fresh way that anyone can tell this is a front burner experience for these people. They're not putting on airs here. Observation is that from 1 Corinthians 9, where Paul says he becomes all things to all people, I think I used that three Wednesdays ago and balanced it with do not be conformed to this world. So do not be conformed to this world, but become all things to all people. And you find the fine line there between moving toward where people are in their musical taste, for example, and without surrendering all submission to the demands of goodness and excellence and beauty. So yes, I think there is a connection there. Oh boy, the hands just flashed. Probably the ones that are going to stick are when a bard really writes something extraordinary that plumbs the depths, and people say that'll apply to the next generation. And they keep singing that one, and the one that was just kind of shut off, like I write poems for my kids on their birthday at 1 a.m. the night before. Nobody's going to remember those poems and sing those or put them in any kind of anthology. They'll just kind of go into the memorabilia file. Go ahead. Randall, Psalm 1, how many times is that repeated? About 25 times. His steadfast love endures forever. His steadfast love endures forever. So like if we were to only say, His steadfast love endures forever, His steadfast love endures forever, His steadfast love endures forever, 25 times, that would come close to being an abuse of repetition. Whereas if we insert new data for the brain to contemplate and enjoy, then it breaks the negative effect of it. Evie. I can improve on C.S. Lewis, further up, further in. The book Charity and Its Fruits by Jonathan Edwards has a glorious chapter called Heaven is a World of Love that blew Noel and me away in the winter of 1971. The question was, why do we have a preponderance of the old on Sunday morning and a preponderance of the new on Sunday night? Why not have a better mixture? Fair? On Sunday morning. And I think the answer is tradition and expectation that we don't want to rock the boat any more than it's already rocking. We're taking on water as it is around here. It may also be that Sunday morning's atmosphere one place in the life of the church where you cultivate the fine culture dimensions of worship and thus that's why it doesn't work. You're right. And neither does my cherished image of Sunday morning as more august, more majestic, more solemn, more reverent, more awesome, because many of the worship songs do that. They do that for me. And I think what I can say, and this relates to something I'm going to talk about in a minute, is that probably, if we're permitted by the church without excessive negative reaction, we will weave more in. I mean, we have more now than we did 5 years ago, for sure. And I think that the people who love the old most, that there are many of the new that they like, too. And if we avoid the excessive repetition and avoid certain things that people associate with contemporary music, maybe. I mean, for some it might be a drum that's too loud, or an electric guitar that's too loud. If we can, all I can say is we're steering away between and among capacities to worship in certain ways that we don't want to turn off. We don't want to wreck the worship service for anybody. And we realize that we fall short of pleasing those who love the contemporary songs, and we fall short sometimes of pleasing those who love the older songs and wish that's all we sang. But the preponderance is owing to tradition and expectation and diversity of people that are there. And I suppose that's a good place to cultivate respect for those songs. Good point. If Jesus sang a hymn with the disciples as they were leaving, or just before they left the upper room, having eaten the Lord's Supper together, it's in all likelihood was not a brand new song that he taught them at that moment for any particular occasion, but one that they had sung many times before and was a precious, precious, precious song to them. He probably picked the one that they loved the most, that was the deepest and strongest. And it probably wasn't a psalm from the Old Testament. That'd be my guess. Let me try another continuum on you here. Directed and extemporaneous. Or you could put planned and unplanned, although I don't think that's quite as good. It seems to me that worship can be fairly carefully directed, and worship can be extemporaneous. And as I reflected on this, it seems to me that both are very good, and mostly it's size that determines which predominates. The bigger the group of people that are gathering to worship, the more direction will be needed. And the smaller the group, the less structure. You can imagine a group of 6 people gathering together in a little room, how utterly ridiculous it would be to have a bulletin. I mean, it wouldn't feel right. A bulletin, to guide us with 6 people. Rather, it would be somebody would begin to talk, and they'd say, well, let's do this, and others would make their contribution, and you would be in prayer, and there would just be a lot more natural individual give and take. Bring that group to 30 in a small church, and a different dynamic takes over. Bring it to 150, a little different dynamic. Bring it to 500 and above, and you probably got a dynamic that's going to be very, very, very different. So my sense is that the place for extemporaneous worship at Bethlehem will by and large not be in the Sunday morning experience. By extemporaneous worship, I mean seasons in which anybody can say anything they feel led to say. And the reason for that is among that big number, say in the middle service here, we have close to 500 people sometimes. It's hard to hear individual who starts praying or talking. There are people who you don't know in that kind of a big group, and therefore Managing order, like I see commended in 1 Corinthians 14, is much harder. And it just becomes very difficult, I think, to do an edifying thing extemporaneously. Now, I was talking this over with Tom this morning. I can think of extemporaneous dimensions to our worship. For example, I have a lot of leeway at that point. And I pray more and more that as I preach, God will give me the gift of prophecy, which I think means bring to my mind wonderfully suited things for the people in that particular middle service, so that I'll say things different in different services just because different things come to my mind. This is basically the same sermon, but I would love to have the gift of prophecy. As I understand it now, that would simply say God periodically or frequently brings to my mind things that will cause Andy here to just say, good night, that was just tailor-made for me, this morning. Didn't say it at any other service. It just was there. So I have the privilege, being the speaker, to avail myself of extemporaneous dimensions of worship and experience with God. Other ones are in moments of silence. We have 2 places of silence in the service, at least 3, if you count there's the moment for meditation, the organ praise, and the offertory, when I hope you're dealing with God. And in that moment of dealing with God, different things can be happening in your heart.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Light and Truth, where we are committed to providing God-centered preaching to help you see Christ clearly and treasure Him truly. I'm your host, Dan Kruver. On our next episode, John Piper begins a 2-part series titled, For God's Name's Sake. I hope you'll join us. For more resources, visit desiringgod.org.